I'm the perfect amount of shiny and sweaty. Let's do it. And let's get this going so I can go back to my snacks and my park fun time. So yeah, but I really want to touch upon this. And this is honestly a central point for why I do the content in general and why I'm so excited in general to talk about things like this. It's the soul, the core. It may not be obvious to most people, but if we really just think about it, really just feel about it for long enough, if we explore life as well for long enough, we can get to this point where the soul becomes obviously the center of it all. We notice ourselves maintaining in dreams, and then we wake up the next morning realizing, that was me. There were a whole bunch of things going on, but what really mattered was how I acted, how I felt about all of those situations in my dreams. And in that sense, it's no different than in waking life. We're portraying a certain thing around people, in jobs, in conversations, in transactions, but beneath that, we have our core. There you go. Now you can see it in the frame. It's in there. It is us. Beneath the masks, beneath the personas, how we're trying to portray ourselves, what we're trying to pull off, right? So let's get down to the real nitty-gritty of it while I itch my foot. Oh yeah, summertime, sweat, heat, mosquitoes. So it's this concept of soul fluency, to treat self-knowledge, self-awareness, knowing thyself, as a sort of language that we can dialogue with ourselves, or dare I say monologue. So I will relate it to my personal experiences and efforts, and then I'll make it more universal. So I've always been interested in psychology, and then when I had a sort of spiritual awakening of sorts at 21, I got to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't have to live the way I was living. I don't have to think the way I was thinking. I don't have to feel the way I was feeling. So it was really a point of lucidity, even though in many respects at the start, it went from programming and delusions here and then being like, but I could be anything. So I went to delusional programming in a more spiritual sense. Now, very thankful to be at the point where I've balanced the scales and gotten a lot more intricate with critical thinking and just general mental emotional balance, having cognitive dissonance hit me and not completely shattering and hiding in a cave, but taking things in stride. So being more internally based from the start, take a Meyer-Briggs test. You might be an introvert. So I'm an INFP, just introverted, more intuitive, more feeling, more perceiving instead of drawing conclusions, just being more abstract about life, which everybody has advantages. And, doing all this research in terms of personality and psychology and, soul-based research, finding more out about yourself, you get to a point where you're like, I fall short in all of these categories, but I'm super boosted in these other categories, right? You could say other stats, right? So knowing thyself, just really diving in, doing this self-research into your soul, learning the language, right, becoming fluent in soul, is really all right. And then this is the more universal stuff, the applicable stuff, the take-home stuff. Okay, it's really to just on all levels operate better, operate more efficient, and then in a more feeling side, operate more real and true and authentic. So this is what I'm trying to get people to become aware of, to eventually understand, to eventually integrate, to eventually come back to me in however many months or years time and be like, whoa, dude, like, I found out about this content, or I did some research, and dude, it's true. It's actually happening. Things are actually unfolding. The layers are peeling away. So there's fluency, and then there's a sort of lucidity, a fluidity, where things are just becoming effortless. Things are just becoming more real and alive and clear, right? Clarity, right? I gotta write some of this stuff down. This is good stuff. Did I bring my notebook? Don't think I did. Oh well, we're doing it live. So this fluidity, this lucidity of soul, where you're just so confident, so just fluent, you're just so yourself, where you can just be in the most ridiculous situations and just stay strong, just stay rooted, stay grounded in you, because you're like, oh, this is a ridiculous situation. This is wild. You know, like, I'm staying rooted, I'm staying true in myself. So, you know, I'm going to keep moving. And in fact, right, a little optimism sprinkled in there, where it's like, in fact, I'm going to take this and, you know, whatever I can't see now that I can use as an advantage or as a learning, as a growing experience, it'll happen in hours, in days, or in weeks, where I'm going to look back on this situation and be like, you know, boom, boom, boom. Actually, oh, you know, if that didn't happen, that wouldn't have led me to think that, to feel that, to do that. Actually, that ridiculous situation actually helped out a lot, etc., etc., etc. So I want to leave it at this because, again, I want to go back to my snacks. I want to go back to my park and do my other stuff. So the fluidity, the lucidity, the fluency of knowing yourself at the core level, and getting to that point where you're like, all right, cool. Like, I know myself, right? Like, think of it like a job interview. I'm actually going to have an interview later where how I'm going to walk into it. And as I like to walk into every moment in life, it's like, look, I'm going to portray myself the best I can, the best I know how. If I have slip-ups, you know, whatever. But I'm going to improvise, and even a slip-up, even a trip, I'm going to turn, you know, a trip. Whoa! Even a trip, I'm going to turn into a beautiful dance. And they might even compliment the dance. They might even, you know, think the dance was admirable. And little do they know that I was tripping and finding my balance, that they liked my style, right? Style is another concept where it's like, if you're so, or when you're so rooted and cleared out in your soul, in yourself, you're just like, I'm doing it, right? And then people admire, people like, people are inspired by your style. even if they don't like the words that you're saying or like the physical way that you're portraying yourself, they like the fact that you're so rooted and so deep in yourself. They're just like, this guy's pretty sweet. I don't agree with anything he says, or I don't agree with much of what he says, or I don't think that, you know, his style or the way that he's doing things is something I would do, but like, shout out to my mans, right? Just making it happen. So, bada bing, bada boom. Think about it, feel about it, do about it, perhaps. Be about it, right? Being all about it. Anyway, peace out.